Hello, everyone. My name is Don Driver, alcoholic. And thank you, everybody, for coming here today. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to try to pass on the things that were showed to me uh, in this wonderful program that we're in. To me, this book is a magical, mystical book, which uh, through casual reading is not going to unlock its secrets. There's deep mystical secrets that are inside this book that, if followed as a blueprint, can enhance and change our lives completely. I've seen it happen in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And this has been a beautiful experience that many of us have had. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to cover, you probably already know. Hopefully, I'll be able to shine some light on some things that maybe you hadn't considered before. So to begin with, let's go into this book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm going to go to the first page, the title page, I guess they call it, where it says Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know if you can see that. It says Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Not in the process of recovery, not grateful recovery, none of this stuff, recovered. How Steve introduced himself earlier. And so let's go over to page 84 really quick and take a look at what that looks like. So on 84, on the last paragraph, it's going to give us an idea what that should be like for us once we've done this process to the best of our ability using the directions in this book. It says, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted to recoil from it as from a hot flame, react sanely and normally. What are they talking about sanely? In step 2, they're talking about came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, sanely and normally, and we'll find that this has happened automatically. We'll see that our new attitude towards liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, nor are we avoiding temptation. So I guarantee you that's where all of us want to be and all of us want to stay. Right? We're not fighting it. We're not avoiding it. We're none of that stuff. It's just irrelevant to us. And my entire journey in there has been like that ever since I worked this process. And I can remember the day that happened. It happened when I made my first amend. I had this a spiritual experience that just rocked me to the core. And I've never once, with all the problems that we have in our lives, I've never once thought, it never came to mind that a drink would be okay. So a lot of other dumb stuff came up, but not drinking, and for someone like us, and I'm going to put you in that boat with me. If my drinking patterns like this, if I'm awake, I'm drinking. And someone in here knows what I'm talking about. There is no job. There's nothing else. I'm drinking and I'm doing drugs. So let's go back to the beginning of the book and see. I want to go to 1, 2, 3. Let me see. Let's go to the preface. In my book, it's Roman numeral 11. I think it's the same in your book also. But this is a 4th edition book I have in front of me. No, it's 3rd edition. Yeah, 3rd edition. So it might be different on some other stuff. So on the first paragraph down, it's going to say, because this book has become our basic text and for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists a sentiment in any radical changes being made in it. Now, as some of you know, over in New York, I heard about they're trying to make changes to this book. They're going to put this, that, and the other. These ideas have come about from time to time. But what I heard one of my sponsors tell me, I don't care what they do with the book. I still have my copy of it, right? And the reason I read that part to us is because it works. Why would I change something that works, right? Why? It's just ridiculous. Right? It's not even necessary to modify it. So let's go over a couple more pages to the forward to the 1st edition. And so what we're talking about today is the 12th step, but I'm getting this kind of revved up to that part. And in the forward edition, it says, For this is the forward as appeared in the first printing of the first edition in 1939. It says we, and as you guys know, that when they say we of Alcoholics Anonymous, they're talking about the first 100, and none of those people are alive anymore. So they're not talking about any of us. Of Alcoholics are more than 100 men and women who have, and here's them words again, recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind. Now they're talking about the mental obsession and body, the physicalology. But here's why I brought us to reference this point: to show other alcoholics, not you, to show other alcoholics. That's what this book's designed for. If I just do my step work with my sponsor and I don't show anyone else for whatever reason I might come up with that I can't do it, I'm not working this program. And we'll reference that in a minute. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book, to show other alcoholics, right? So real quick, let's roll over to page 60 and take a look at the 12th step, since that's what we're speaking on today. And so on page 60, right there at the top, I'm going to read what the 12th step says, the off the wall version. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So the 12th step has three parts. The first part says, having had a spiritual awakening. Now look at the 6 qualifying words: as a result of these steps. Not going to dances, not going to meetings, not any of that other stuff. They're very explicit here, as a result of the steps. There's a lot of different ideas about this. A lot of people think they get this by going to meetings. If you can stay sober by going to meetings, great. But maybe you're going to end up trying to show the steps to somebody that has a more severe problem than you have. And it's probably not going to work for them. In fact, I guarantee it's not gonna. Let's roll back to the beginning of the book, and let's go to, so what I'm taking us to here, they're already in the very beginning of the book telling me about working with other people. So it must be a real important part. So there's the part about having had a spiritual awakening as a result of steps. That's the first part of step 12. The second is we try to carry the message, is the second part. And the third part is to practice these principles in all our affairs. When they say principles, what are they talking about? The principal steps are steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So obviously I need to know what steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 is to work this process. In fact, the entire program rests on my understanding of the 4th step. And and inside, included inside this, the 4th step, in the beautiful chapter how it works, they talk about instincts, my social, my security, and my sex instinct, self-esteem, pride, personal relations in the social. In the security, I got my material and my emotional security. In the sex, I got my sex instinct, right? And these instincts, they're for my survival, for our survival as a species. And of course, one of the greatest things, one of the most important things for survival in any successful species is going to be the reproductive. Are they able to reproduce in great enough number to still be here, to still survive? And not that all the other instincts aren't powerful and necessary, but that's going to be a very strong one. And in my estimation, the social instinct is the strongest instinct of all. This seems to be like some secret, at least where I stay at, not too many people know that information. It's like top secret stuff or something. I don't know. Pretty interesting. So let's go over to page XVI. And that should be, the first word on that page should be experience. Okay, so let's go down to the first paragraph down. It says, prior to his journey to Akron, the broker, and they're talking about Bill Wilson now, had worked hard with many alcoholics on the theory that only an alcoholic can help an alcoholic, but he had succeeded in only keeping himself sober. The broker had gone to Akron on a business venture which had collapsed, leaving him greatly in fear that he might start drinking again. He suddenly realized that in order to save himself, he must carry his message to another alcoholic. That alcoholic turned out to be the Akron physician. Now, some of you have read Pass It On, and you know it describes this where he's in the Mayflower Motel, and he looks at this directory, and he calls all the other numbers. The last number is Reverend Tunks, who hooks him up with Henrietta Sleiberling, who hooks him up at at the Cyberling Tire mansion with Dr. Bob, and that's how Alcoholics Anonymous started through that relationship. So now they're going to talk about the physician. This is about Dr. Bob. The physician who had repeatedly tried spiritual means to resolve his alcoholic dilemma, but had failed. But when the broker gave him Dr. Silkworth's description of alcoholism, he's talking about the allergy, and the allergy, along with the obsession. And its hopelessness, the physician began to pursue a spiritual remedy with the spiritual remedy for his malady with a willingness he had never before been able to muster. He sobered never to drink again up until the moment of his death in 1950. This seemed to prove that one alcoholic could affect another as no non-alcoholic could. It also indicated that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, was vital to permanent recovery. Hence, the two men set out to work frantically upon alcoholics arriving at the ward in the Akron City Hospital. So there's a book called Sister Ignatius, the Angel of AA, and it speaks about how she would arrange empty rooms for these guys to meet people. So you can see how the finger of God has moved to make all these things happen. And it's interesting about Dr. Bob's story. The night that he disappeared, he didn't come home, Bill was visiting him in Akron, Ohio, and he disappeared for that day, and he went to go do an operation, and he didn't come home when they expected him to. We gave him a couple of beers before he went to do the operation, because as most of you know, Dr. Bob was a proctologist, so you don't want him working on your proctor when his hands are all shaky. He needed a couple of beers to mellow him out, right? And he didn't come home, and he did something. For 2.5 years in the Oxford group, he's tried to stay sober, and he could not stay sober until he went out that night and made amends. He went all around the town and made the amends that he could. And the man never drank again. So, just there's precedence with all these things that's happened. So let's go over a couple more pages. And that would be XIX. And the last sentence on that page, while the internal difficulties of our adolescent period were being ironed out, public acceptance of AA grew by leaps and bounds. For this, there were two principal reasons. Number one, large numbers of recoveries, and number two, reunited homes. These made their impressions everywhere. Of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. When I read that really tried, I think they're talking about actually work the steps instead of pontificating upon them and the stuff that some of us often do. Or finding we're doing partial this a part of it. And 25% sobered up after some relapses, and upon the remainder, those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. So right there, they're showing a 75% recovery rate. I've had the opportunity, as many of you have, to take lots of people through the steps. And what I realized the recovery rate of Alcoholics Anonymous is this: 100%. The only people who don't stay around is people who only do part of this work. And I think that probably the biggest mistake that some of us make is in the 10th step, that first word where it says continue. Because that's what happens. We just start going to meetings and do this and do that. And then all of a sudden, we're out in left field somewhere. And that's not a good place to be. That 10th step is going to keep me right where I need to be. All right. Let's go over to the doctor's opinion, a couple pages over. I think it's XXV maybe in your book, or else XXIII. Sound like one of them Mexican hat dances. Let's go down to the third paragraph down where it says, in late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he'd been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of the type I had come to regard as hopeless. What he's talking about there is that boy's got the allergy. Ain't no way he's going to beat this thing. It's going to kill you. It will kill you. Not sometimes, every time if you got this disease. All right. In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, doing what? Impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of the rapidly growing fellowship of their men and their families. What is the basis of the fellowship, the rapidly growing fellowship? One man or one woman working with another. You know, I'm not into that men with men, women with women. You know what? It's not always situated that way. There might not be a man around that knows enough. You might have to get a woman or vice versa, right? Just like when I was out getting drugs, if I seen the better connection, I'm not gonna, oh, I'm just gonna cop from this shitty dope. You know, I'm just gonna go with this. That's not how I roll. And I don't think most of you do. You know, I want to get the real deal. So it goes on to say, these men and women and their families, this man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. So this guy, Dr. Silkworth, he don't have the allergy, so he's viewing it from an outside perspective. He's seeing, he'd been working in this field forever, and he hasn't seen anything that's been happening. As soon as Bill Wilson showed up, he started actually seeing people recover. So let's go over a couple more pages. So the reason I'm reading this, they're telling me that I'm supposed to start working with other people. I don't know how anyone could miss that part in the book, because it's telling me that right from the beginning, I need to work with other people. In fact, if I'm not, I'm only doing 2/3 of step 12. I'm missing 1/3 of it, probably the greatest part, trying to carry this message to other alcoholics. So let's go over two more pages to XXV. It might be different on your book where it says, many years ago, I'll give you a second to get to that point. I might have the page up, but I went over 2 pages. Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital. And while here, he acquired some ideas, which he put into practical application at once. Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients. And here, with some misgiving, we consented. The cases we have followed through have been most amazing. In fact, most interesting. In fact, many of them amazing. The unselfishness of these men as we come to know them, not the selfish. This ain't a selfish program. It's an unselfish program. If you're considering this a selfish program, you haven't got the idea yet. The entire absence of profit motive and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in the alcoholic field. They believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. So when they say they believe in themselves, there's a part in our book, and We Agnostics, that talks about where we're going to find God. We're going to find God, or the great reality, deep down within us, right? I think that's what he's referring to. Remember, this is somebody else viewing us from the outside. And I've heard this said, and it makes all the sense in the world. Those who look outward dream. Only those who look inward awaken. I found that to be absolutely true. Those who look outside dream. Those who look inside awaken. All right, let's go over to, I think we're good to go. Let's go over to page 89 and in the chapter, How It Works. Working with others, sorry. So the actual program of action is going to start with how it works. I think that's on page 58. it's an interesting, I learned, it took me a couple of years to realize that what Bill has done. When he named the chapters, he named them adequately, how it works. If I don't know what's contained in how it works, I don't know how it works. I know something else. So in how it works, there's two steps contained in there, 3 and 4. So obviously 3 is sort of important, but 4 is the linchpin, like I said earlier. If I don't understand step 4, the rest of the program is not going to be is adequate. It won't present itself as readily to myself. And then there's into action, which contains 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And now we're in how working with others. So let's see what happens here. Chapter 7, working with others. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intense, it don't say work, it says intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. I guarantee you, if you got the problem that most of us have, you're going to want immunity from drinking. You don't want it to be that, once a week or once a month that you have this, the mental obsession creeping in on your ass, telling you that you need to take a drink or, that's just, I couldn't even imagine a life like that. You know why? Because I only have to drink one time and that mental obsession and the physical allergies kicked off and it's over for me. And I'm one of them guys, I don't know about you, but once I start drinking, I don't just stop because somebody wants me to or the judge tells me to. The only time that I stop is when I go to jail. Now that's an extreme, but I guess I'm an extreme person. I got that allergy really bad. I love drinking, love it. So it goes on. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. My second or third sponsor told me you can't hurt the dead and dying. So a lot of times, people will say, well, I don't really know. I don't know the steps like you do or whatever. I go, I didn't learn them overnight. How you learn the steps is by doing it. It's not a psychological endeavor. It's an action. It's thinking and action, right? It's imperative that I work with other people. If I don't, and I have this disease, I'm going to go back to using again. It said, so here's the promises that are going to happen for me. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and each other is the bright spot of our lives. Now, I don't know about you guys, but every once in a while, a couple, 3 times or whatever, a year, people come up, oh man, you're my great grand sponsor. You're my this, you're that, I can go in towns miles away. I can go to Las Vegas. I can go to LA. I can go down to Arizona and people will come up and say, oh yeah, and when they hear my name, yeah, I know you, blah, blah, blah. And that's what happens when we've been around here for a minute and we've touched a lot of people's lives, as all of us, if we hang around and do this work, are going to be touching other people's lives. That's the whole point of this process. Let's go over a couple of pages to page 90, actually on the top. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste your time trying to persuade him. You may spoil a later opportunity. What do they mean by that? I don't know how many times I've heard people come up and say, I worked the program before and I drank and used again. And so then I'll break it down. Well, tell me what you did. Okay, you did your 4th step. All right. You did your 5th step. But what about your amends? Oh, I only made, well, no, you didn't do the program. Because the integral part that's going to make me free is doing steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And if you don't do that, that's what Dr. Bob did on that night. He went out and made his amends and it made him a free man. What I mean by a free man is he no longer had the obsession to drink anymore. Plus, I'm sure it made his life immensely easier. My life's hella easy. I don't know about you guys. You know, I don't run into problems too much today. Why? Because I have a solution for them. And when my mind gets all twisted up, what do you think I do? I pull out the 4th step, I write on it, which you might want to call it the 10th step. It's the same thing. There's no difference. I write on it. I call my step guide or go by there and I tell them about my problems and deficiencies. And then I go sit for the hour and I get step 6 all in line, right? So everything's good and groovy. Why am I going to do step 6? What am I talking about? What am I supposed to be doing in step 6? I'm supposed to be preparing myself for what? To go make my amend, right? I understand which instincts were involved. I understand that my instincts have tricked me once again into thinking, saying, or doing some dumb shit or some dumb thinking. And I can laugh at myself again for being fooled by my instincts. So I don't take it personal. There was a book wrote in the 30s called The Impersonal Life. I'm sure some of you read it. Beautiful book, just beautiful. The Impersonal Life. We're very good. I'm very good at taking stuff personal, but these steps unwind that so I can see it for what it is, what I see, which instincts are involved. Anyone in here that doesn't understand what I'm talking about, instincts, it would behoove you to look further into that. They speak about it. I don't use the 12 and 12 too much because it's the 12 and 12. It's just a commentary. There's no directions. But in step 4 on page 42, it says creation gave us instincts for a purpose. Without them, we wouldn't be complete human beings. If men and women didn't exert themselves to be secure, blah, 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 it's going to outline the instincts. So there's a couple parts in that book that I do like. And, you know, there's a lot of great information in there, but there's really not a lot. There's no directions. So where it says you may spoil an later opportunity, these people think they've actually worked the steps and they didn't work for them. No, they haven't. It's impossible to do these steps and continue doing them and use again. It goes against everything that there is. All right, let me see. Let's go over to, well, yeah, let's go to the last paragraph on that page. Or actually, let's go to the second paragraph down on page 90, where it says sometimes. Sometimes it's wise to wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it's better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he's very drunk, unless he is ugly and the family needs your help. Wait for the end of the spree, or at least a lucid interval. Then let his family ask him. So this book, one thing to keep in mind when I'm reading this book is that this book was written when there were only 2 meetings in the whole world, and there was only a couple of detoxes, and most detoxes were well out of the scope of most families' ability to afford. So this stuff's been done, would happen from, going over to someone's house and everything else. And as most of you know, this book was a mail order book that they mailed out for $3.50, I think, in a brown paper wrapper to people's homes all throughout the United States and perhaps, places in other places in the world, I don't know. But that's why it says at one point, let us know what results you've been having in the beginning of the book, because they didn't know if this could be transmitted by just through the book, right? So this is also imperative that I don't do this. Next paragraph down. If he doesn't want to see you, never force yourself upon him. Neither should the family hysterically plead with him what you should do. There's a guy in this whatever you call this chat or whatever, right? I'm not a big book or Zoom guy. In fact, and that's what I did. He was still shooting dope when I went and saw him. I had about a month clean. I'd already done my fifth step. I was out making my amends, and I stopped by his house. Do you think I preached to him about the program? I didn't have to say nothing. He already knew. All I did is sat down, kicked it with him for a minute. But you know what? It must have baffled his mind. How is this guy not drinking and shooting dope no more? Right? I went by a couple of days, I made my amend, and went by a couple of days later, maybe a couple of weeks later, and I brought a book with me and I set it on the table. About 2 or 3 years later, he showed up into the program, and today he's got 20, 30, I don't know, 25 years. I'm not really a time person. In fact, today is my AA birthday. Uh, let's see.
We'll even extend your warranty from 1 year.
Let's go over to page 91. And let's go down to the third paragraph down where it says, see your man alone if possible. At first, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn to talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experience you encounter. You encourage him to speak of himself. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit, but say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. If he is in a serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor has caused you, being careful not to moralize or lecture. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell you some of his. Why? The next sentence tells me. When he sees you know all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were and how you finally learned that you were sick. Give him an account of the struggles that made you stop. Show him the mental twist that leads to the first drink of a spree. We suggest you do this as we have done it in the chapter on alcoholism. Now look at this. If he is alcoholic, he will understand you at once. I remember when I had the first step experience, it was the first day when I was in this program that I could read. And I made the mistake of reading the doctor's opinion. And when the doctor suggested that I might have this physical allergy, boom, I had never heard that before. I had never considered that before. I had never even thought about that there might be something different about my body. And I had to read the rest of this book as soon as I could. It just blew my mind that there was somebody that knew what was wrong with me. And like most of you, I'd resigned my life to drinking and doing dope. I didn't, I mean, this is just what I'm going to do. But somehow this book pulled me out of that, whatever was going on at that time, and got me interested in the program of action. And what a miracle that is for us. Changes us completely. All right. Let's go down to the next paragraph where it says, if, the first paragraph down, if you are satisfied he is a real alcoholic. Why are they asking? Why are they saying that? If you are satisfied he's a real alcoholic. Because there's a lot of people around us that might not have the severity of alcoholism that you may have, and they can just come to meetings and be okay. But there's some of us that aren't going to be okay going to meetings. It's not going to be enough, right? So what they're saying is, if he's a real alcoholic, he might want to do this work. And it might take him a few times of stumbling and getting back up to realize, oh man, I got to do this now. You know, other thing I've noticed that's really strange about this situation, it seems like the universe only gives us so many chances at this. And I see these guys our gals come back 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times, and sometimes that window's closed. And these guys end up killing themselves. These guys end up ODing, or they end up having some type of accident or something. And it's a horrible thing to see. A lot of people go through a lot of needless misery in this program. A lot of needless program. I don't care any problem that I've ever had in the past, any situation I might have going on today, or anything that will happen in the future, steps 4 through 9 will take care of it. It's been my experience. I've been doing this a while. I've had all the stuff happens that happened to people. You know, people have lied to me, stole from me, relationships have ended, people have cheated on me, on and on and on. It takes care of all of it. I've also made done my share of things that weren't right too. Took care of that also. Right? What a beautiful process for someone undisciplined like myself that needs help going through life. It's just that simple. All right. So let's go down to the next paragraph, which says, continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness a fatal malady. Like I said, this ain't no joke. It'll kill you. Talk about the conditions of body and mind. Why do you think they keep putting the conditions of body first? Because that's what makes us alcoholic, theology, not the obsession. I could have an obsession to drink. I've seen people do that. They've had some horrible things happen in their lives. And, you know, they've drank for a year or two, 6 months or whatever, quite heavily. But and some of them even came to AA. And, but they can just stop. Can you? Can you just stop and stay stopped? Probably not. So it would behoove us to understand this recipe for being free to the best of our ability, I would think. All right. Let's go over to page 93, to the last paragraph down where it says your prospect. Your prospect may belong to a religious denomination. His religious education and training may be far superior to yours. Yep. In that case, he's going to wonder how you can add anything to what he already knows. But he will be curious to learn why his own convictions have not worked and why yours seem to work so well. He may be the example of the truth that faith alone is insufficient. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action. Let him see that you are not here to instruct him in religion. Admit that he probably knows more about it than you do, but call to his attention the fact that however deep his faith and knowledge, he could not have applied it. He could not have applied it, or he would not drink. Perhaps your story will help him see where he has failed to practice the very precepts he knows so well. So if you'll notice, they're not really telling me really how to sponsor here or nothing. You know, there's really no directions here. Does anyone know why? Because the directions are in starts with how it works and into action. That's where the directions are on how to sponsor, right? What was taught to me, right? How to do steps 4, how to do 5, how to do 6, how to do 7, how to do 8, and how to do 9, right? And then they've got, of course, step 10, which is 4 through 9 in the chapter into action, and step 11. The reason why I do this work, to improve my conscious contact with God, right? So there's really not a whole lot of like do this, do that here, because it's all contained right there in those other chapters. So you mean to tell me that 8 pages in the doctor's opinion and then 103 pages, so there's only 111 pages that I need to know to have a whole new life? Are you worth that? 111 pages, you can't read that, you can't practice that, you can't show that to somebody else. Now there's a whole bunch of other stuff in the book. We'll address that in a minute, hopefully, or not. All right, let's see. Let's go on to page 96 at the top. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you have to offer. We find it a waste of time chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you. I've seen hundreds and hundreds and cannots. I don't think I've ever met a will not. I know some people that are certifiedly hearing voices and stuff, and these people have worked this process to the best of their ability with a step guide that knows what they're doing. And these people have decades of time. Decades of time. You know, maybe they were self-medicating, who knows? I don't know. All I know is I see them around me, and it's a beautiful sight to see. Instead of them being somebody living on the street somewhere and having people abuse them, they're a productive or semi-productive members of society. What a beautiful thing to see a free human being that has a handicap that I don't even close to have. All right. So let's Let's go over to page 99 on the very last sentence, where it says, remind the prospect that his recovery, actually the last paragraph, let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. That just isn't so. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. I love this. I read this to hear the first night that I could read it. I was talking about earlier. And I stopped right here. Remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon other people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. I love that. That felt so right. We have seen men get well with whose families have not returned at all. We have seen others slip when the family came back too soon. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. You should both. It don't say that you need to go everywhere together, that you need to drive them around. All that stuff. It says you should walk day by day. If I'm not still growing every day, I'm not doing what I need to be doing. It's that simple. You know, how's that happen? I read a bunch of different books, or I read different spiritual literature of different kinds. I read religious literature. I volunteer at mosques, ashrams, churches, wherever. And I get to learn other people's customs and traditions. And every single one of them, I've been to Sikh temples, I've been to ashrams, they all have something beautiful to offer and something to give to mankind. Where before, nah, I'm not going to go look at that. Nah, no way. That's this, that's that. Man, just this process of steps 4 through 9 can open ours up to all kinds of beautiful things. All right. Let's go to the last paragraph on page 100. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid motion pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded of alcohol at all. Our experience shows that it's not necessarily so. Nothing pisses me off more when I go over to someone's house and they hide their mirror or any of that kind of shit. I don't care if you're snorting coke. I don't care. I don't want to watch you shooting up so much, but I don't care what you're doing. When you hide it from me, I feel like I'm not a part of this. I don't care what you do. I do not have the mental obsession anymore. I can go into a bar. Do I hang out in the bar? No, I might go in there and have a sandwich. I go there for a meeting. I go there to play some pool. Do I hang out all night? No. I do what I'm going to do, like a quote normal person might do, and without the drinking though. And then I go. Doesn't cause any problems at all for me. Some of you may not be able to, and that's just, whatever sensibilities you have. You can figure that out as you go along. It says we meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. What does that mean? That means you still have the mental obsession that Dr. Silkworth so adequately presented to us. There's something the matter with his spiritual status. His only chance for sobriety would be someplace like the Greenland ice cap. And even there, an Eskimo might turn up with a bag and bottle and ruin everything. Go down to the next paragraph. In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. If an alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. The attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there's drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. That includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, even plain old whoopee parties. To a person who has had experience as an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't. You will note that we made an important qualification. Therefore, ask yourself on each occasion, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place? Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such places? If you can answer these questions satisfactorily, you need have no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best, but be sure you're on solid spiritual ground before you start and that your motive for going is thoroughly good. And we should be thinking this next sentence anyway. Do not think of what you will get out of the occasion. Think what you can bring to it. When I go to parties with that, whether it be clean, a clean and sober party or whatever, that's just a beautiful ideas to have in mind and going. So let's go over to page 103. Notice I'm going to end with this. Notice the name of that chapter is called Working with Others, right? So we were talking about step 12 has 3 parts, having had a spiritual awakening, try to carry the message and practice the principles. So working with others, just what it says, steps 103. Now let's go over to the next page over, which would be 104. And it's called To Wives. So obviously with any not stretching of the imagination, the program of action ends on page 103 with the chapter Working with Others. This next chapter, if you read it, it's not to alcoholics' wives, it's to help wives to deal with their alcoholic husbands. And it has a caveat on the bottom saying it could be either way around, right? So, the program of action ends right there. Now, a lot of people will say it goes to 164. There's some great stuff up to page 164, right? In fact, there's some people that somehow work the steps out of the back of the book in these stories. Nowhere in this, anywhere does it say to do that. In fact, there's books that don't have the stories in the back there because they're not part of the program. They are not part of the program. The program ends. The program of action ends right here on page 103, right? Where it says, after all, our problems were of our own making, bottles were only a symbol. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. We have to. Thank you very much, everybody, for letting me take you through this and showing you what my step guide has showed me and what my experiences showed me. And I'm done with that.